dear community, dear people interested in scientific publishing. My name is Vladislav Yastrebov, and we prepared this presentation with Maurine Montagnat. We are both scientists at the French National Center for Scientific Research, CNRS, and we are also at the origin and continue to support a diamond open access journal in mechanics, which is called JTChem. This presentation was given at the European Solid Mechanics Conference in Lyon, France in July 2025. For this opportunity, we are very grateful to Maire and Samuel Forest, chairmen of this conference. All the slides are available with the link given below in the description of this video under CC BY license. The presentation is split into 3 parts. In the first one, we'll present the publishing landscape. In the second one, we'll analyze a survey that we organized for the participants of the European Solid Mechanics Conference about their knowledge and preferences in scientific publishing. And the third part is about editors' perspectives. And with all that, our objective is to guide the community in navigating today's very complex and rapidly changing scientific publishing landscape. Of course, we will be talking about peer-reviewed articles and peer-reviewed journals, which are the cornerstone of the modern science. And the individual papers are the main products of our research. Here is the infographics adapted from the top 100 papers from Nature back to 2014. And if you put all published papers one on the top of another to make this huge pile, this pile would reach almost 6,000 meters. And before we start with this presentation, I would like to ask you a simple question. How many papers in average do you co-sign per year? It's quite easy to compute. You need to take the total number of your papers ever published and divide by the number of years of your scientific career. And the question number 2, it's on the other side of scientific publishing. Since it's peer-reviewed papers, right, someone need to review them. And the second question, how many reviews you do per year? And ask yourself a question, is it in equilibrium the number of papers that I publish and the number of papers I review? Now we will go to the presentation about scientific publishing landscape, and we will start with the presentation of peer-reviewed publication models. And currently there are 4 main publication models. The first one is subscription-based, gold open access, hybrid, diamond open access. So what's subscription? It's a model in which the paywall is in front of the reader, so we can buy either individual papers, or we can subscribe for entire journal, or we can pay for bundle subscription. What is bundle subscription? It's when you cannot select only those journals that you need, but you can select a group of journals and you subscribe to all of them. Gold open access, it's open access publication models in which published papers are available to everybody everywhere in the world. But in this case, the author pays, and there is a very high predatory danger here. Predatory is a class of journals which do not provide high quality copy editing and peer review, but they gain a lot of money. The third one is hybrid. It's a kind of combination of subscription and gold open access. It's when a journal distributes its papers in a subscription mode, but some of papers can be published in gold open access if the authors pay. And the diamond open access model, it's a true, fair open access, and quite often it's community-led publication model. A reasonable question here would be, who pays for this joy to publish and distribute our scientific work? In subscription base, the paywall is on the reader side, and in this case this is institutions who pay. In the gold open access, the author is payer, so the paywall barrier is in front of the publication at the author scale, and quite often it can be paid by PIs and grants, or it can be paid at laboratory scale or an institutional one. For the hybrid, actually either one or another pays, but when in reality both pay, the authors and the readers. And in diamond open access, nobody pays, not reader, no author. Of course, you can say there is no free lunch, and it's true, because in order to make it all work, institutions and governments, they invest in infrastructure and stuff in order to make available this diamond open access initiatives. But in this game of publishing, some people lose, some groups of people. For the subscription base, Global South cannot read. It's very hard to get subscription for very expensive journals. And when I say Global South, I don't mean Global South in economical sense. I could easily find myself in a lab in France and be in the Global South. So the Global South in scientific publishing is much bigger than a Global South in economic sense. In Gold Open Access, Global South again suffers because it cannot publish, because the paywall barrier is quite high. And in hybrid, of course, the Global South suffers as well, because they cannot buy subscription, they cannot pay Gold Open Access. And in Diamond Open Access, of course, because this is very particular model and not very supported by the community, therefore there are not many citations, and H index will suffer here. And in subscription mode and in hybrid models, the published papers can be opened for everybody using green open access. It's when the preprints and postprints are rendered available to everybody through open archives or data storage servers. And transformative agreements, it's a new mode of publications which is based mainly on hybrid mode, but in which we can publish a lot of open access papers and read integrality of journals. So these transformative agreements are signed on the country scale with a big consortium and with big publishers. And of course, our institutions, our public research budget pays for these transformative agreements. On this slide, I put some journals in these categories of subscription, Gold Open Access, Hybrid, and Diamond Open Access. Many of them, you know, especially those from Springer and Elsevier, but some of them, like for example Memox and Joms and Compte Rendu Mécanique, Archives of Mechanics, JTCam, SciPost Physics, maybe you don't know, so it would be nice to talk about them. And here there are a lot of journals of MDPI. All of them operate under Gold Open Access model, and the journals of Frontiers, the same story. And I put a warning sign because there is a very high danger of predatory publishing. Here on this slide I show you volumes of kilo articles published per year by different publishers. So in hybrid mode by Elsevier and Springer, mainly in hybrid mode, but there are also Gold Open Access journals and for these publishers, and by MDP in Frontiers, who operate only with Gold Open Access, right? And you see very high increase for MDPI over last few years. Again, I put warning signs in front of MDPI and Frontiers because, for example, MDPI provides reviewers with only 7 days for review, and I think it's quite dangerous for the science, for the quality of we of course want to open our science and to render our papers freely available to everybody interested. And there is a price behind, which is called APC, Article Processing Charge. And here I show you for different publishers and different journals the price of this open access that we need to pay on the author side in order to render our papers open access. To give you an idea if it's expensive or not, so one open access paper published in IJSS, International Journals of Solids and Structures, example has a historical context, is equivalent to 6 years of institutional subscription to Joms journal, published by non-profit mathematical science publishers. For the same price, we can subscribe for 23 years to Memox, another journal published by the same publisher. But with Diamond Open Access journals, you can publish in open access for €0. Archives of Mechanics, operated by the Polish Academy of Science, Compte Rendu Mécanique by the French Academy of Sciences, and JTCam, hosted at the AP Sciences platform. But nowadays, many countries, they sign transformative agreements with the big publishers, Elsevier, Wiley, Springer, and we recently in France we signed such an agreement for 4 years, and every year to read the papers and to publish our papers in open access we pay approximately 34 million euros. With the key idea of this transformative agreement to render the science more open and our publications freely available. Are transformative agreements good for open science? I'm not sure. Initially, the key idea of transformative agreement is that the price of the open access should be fair. Is it fair or not? I don't know. In France, government and institutions invested in green open access, notably with the HAL platform, and there are other platforms that exist, and all our papers actually could be rendered open access without this agreement. According to our survey, not many scientists know what transformative agreement is. I need to say there is a lack of clear communication with scientists because many of us don't know what we need to do in this context. Now let's talk about bibliometric indicators, and the first one and well known is impact factor. It's on the journal scale. Most of journals have impact factors, and how to compute this indicator? Well, you need to simply count the number of citations obtained in year X by all papers published in this journal in years X-1 and X-2. Again, you need simply divide this number of citations by the number of papers. And who computes this one? This is a small company, small Clarivate, with a $2.7 billion revenue and more than 11,000 employees. Well, they compute impact factors for all journals in Web of Science. It's a database of the journals. If you have a journal, we can apply to this database to be indexed, and in this case, Clarivate will compute for us impact factor, and according to this impact factor, they put the journal in quartiles. Q1 is 25% of the top journals in the field. Q2, it's a second 25% less impactful journals according to impact factor, and so on up to last 25%. Fortunately, nowadays, these calculations could be done with more open and non-profit organizations. For example, OpenAlex. It's a database, free and open, which can be used to compute the same actually data. And for example, in 2024, Sorbonne University unsubscribed from Web of Science and Clarivate services, and they turned to OpenAlex solution. And here in this table, I list some journals with their publisher and impact factor and the cost for the open access article processing charge. And you can see there is a nice correlation for most of them between impact factor and the price. And of course, for diamond open access journals, you have zero price, but the impact factors are quite low. And for example, for our journal JTChem, impact factor is not available because it was a deliberate decision not to be indexed in Web of Science, and we don't want to get an impact factor. With this data, of course, it would make sense to compute the ratio between impact factor and 1 kilo euro cost per open access publication. And you can see that in average is about around 1, but for Nature, for example, we have a very high impact factor per kilo euro cost. But for diamond open access journals, actually, if you divide by 0, you will get infinity. So in these terms, diamond open access journals can win. For top journals in our field, JMPS, IJSS, CMAME, the impact factor grows with time, and you can see that from 2014 to 2024, the impact factor grew quite significantly. However, for Archives of Mechanics, for example, it's a diamond open access journal, this impact factor oscillates around 1.5. Let's switch to another indicator. It's well known, H index. Okay, most of you know what is it and how we can compute it. There's a small illustration how to compute it. And here's the Google Scholar page of Jim Rice, one of the godfathers of solid mechanics and fracture mechanics. And for example, his H index is 94. He always published in journals of his field with a quite narrow auditory, quite focused field, and you can imagine what would be James Rice's H-index if he would publish the Nature and Physical Review letters. Now let's make a link between impact factor and H-index. We constructed a very simple mathematical model which demonstrates that normally your H-index should grow with time with beta positive in such a way that prefactor is kind of square root of impact factor times productivity. And now when we know and we can characterize all the ingredients, we can formulate a nice optimization problem and try to play this game. On the publisher side, we can play the game to maximize impact factors with editors that we have, with models that are available, and with resources which we possess. On the scientist individual side, we can play game, optimization game, by maximizing our H-index with the idea to win the games scientists play. Of course, these two objectives are well aligned. Maybe we are manipulated, we can ask here, because of this strong alignment, and you can see there is no any forces pushing back, and this can go to infinity. But as you know, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. It's a very nice formulation by Maurine Strattern of the Goodhart's law, and that's what happens with these impact factors and H-index. This race for H-index optimization harms science. It contributes to misconduct and scientific fraud and overburdens scientists with more and more review work. Fortunately, there are forces that push back to this crazy optimization. Actually, those are initiatives from scientists and also now from regulators. Back in 2012, there was an initiative that was signed, San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, which was initiated by the American Society for Cell Biology, and it contains a list of recommendations for funding agencies, institutions, and researchers. The main recommendations are to eliminate the use of journal-based metrics in fundings, appointments, and promotions. And the key idea here is to decorrelate the impact factor of journals in which we publish from the quality of our research. And this declaration was signed by many organizations all over the world. There are many of them, but not everybody is here. In 2022, there was created the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, COARA. It contains a list of commitments for funding agencies, institutions, and researchers. These commitments are summarized in only 10 points. And the key idea is to abandon inappropriate uses in research assessment of journal and publication-based metrics such as journal impact factor and H-index. And according to this coalition, we need to assess the research based on qualitative evaluation. And many institutions, universities, and funding agencies, they are part of this coalition. In the total, there are 860 large-scale organizations worldwide. And to conclude this part, I need to state that currently not-for-profit science chooses for-profit publishers because of the legacy, prestige, publication speed, impact factor, and so on. However, I think as a community we can do better, and we can support not-for-profit publishing models, because most of these not-for-profit publishing initiatives are led by our community, by ourselves. I'm talking about subscription-based and diamond open access initiatives like Archives of Mécanique, Mécanique, JOMS, Memox, JTCAM, and many others. Now let's talk about survey. Before the conference, we sent short survey to all participants of the conference, and we received a lot of feedback. First of all, about survey auditory. Those were participants of the European Solid Mechanics Conference. 2025 in July. All the data is available here. Here's DOI and here's the query code you can download and analyze on your own. It was an anonymous Google form. For the collection mode, we got 299 individual replies. So in terms of position, here's the pie chart. You can see that approximately 45% of the participants of the European Solid Mechanics Conference who replied to our survey were early career scientists. In terms of geographical distribution, a lot of participants of the survey are from France, 8% of Germany, Italy, and other countries. And 75% of the survey participants are men and 22% are women. One of the important questions of the survey was what are the criteria of the journal selection? And 71% replied target auditory is one of the main selection criteria. Impact factor goes on the second place. Editorial board is less important for people, and editorial model is even less. We're happy to see that the short time to publication is not that important for many people who reply to our survey. For other options, many people talked about reputation and prestige of journals. Some people try to publish in new journals to maximize the target auditory. Some people select journals which they trust in terms of ethical behavior. The second question, what are the expected added value from journal? Almost everybody, 90%, replied that a fair and efficient review process is very important for them. A broad visibility is important for 50%, and open access is quite important for people, but open access, as we discussed, has different phases. A fast publication here, it's 20%, that's quite important, and diamond open access is important for 10%. Other remarks some people mentioned as added value is open peer review. Some people argue that the principle to put the seal of the truth on the research from the opinion of two reviewers is not a good thing. People value good review process which is not too fast. What we expect actually from journal, it's a fair and efficient review process. That's the main thing. Okay, now a question about diamond open access. The question was very simple. Have you heard about diamond open access journals? And almost 40% have not heard, to our surprise. And 26% heard about this but do not know what it is. So a lot of people actually don't really know what's diamond open access. And I hope now with this presentation you know better about that. But fortunately, about 11% of responders, they have already published in one of diamond open access journals. That's great. Now a question about open science. Open science is quite a broad term which includes open data, open source software, open access to publications, and so on. And you see that for 53% the open science approach is very important, and for 38 it's important. So it means for the community it's actually very important. Question about transformative agreement. And most of people who reply to our survey, they don't know what actually transformative agreements are. Nevertheless, they transform a lot the publication landscape nowadays in many countries. To remind here, the key idea of transformative agreements is to transit from a hybrid model to more fair price open access model. In practice, what we get in France, for example, in France, we pay 34 million euro per year, approximately as much as in previous contract with Elsevier, but now the community benefits from 10,000 open access publications. And on individual scale, researchers can think this is a great thing, we can now publish in open access and bring more impact and more readers to our papers. But on the country scale, we provide handling all this open access to Elsevier without using our infrastructure that was constructed in France, especially the HAL, where all scientists share their results in green. And the next point is about the future of scientific publishing. The majority of responders, they think that we will publish always more and more. And but many people think that community-driven diamond open access will take the lead. Some people do believe that we'll publish less but better. It would be great for the community, I think. Only 20% thought that the classical publishing market will grow. Only 6% they think that we'll publish only data and code. And there are a lot of different opinions about this. We selected few of them. For example, people who hope for less and better papers in diamond open access journals, but they are not very hopeful. A nice remark about the field is contaminated by the use of publications for career progression purposes rather than for scientific communications. I hope this publication craziness will cease and that we publish less but better papers, and we will publish less but better. This is my dream. All the data can be found following this link, and this link will be copied in the description of this video. And the last part of this presentation is about editors' perspectives. For this part, we recorded 4 interviews with David Rodney, editor of Acta Materialia and Scripta Materialia, with Alexander Popp, editor of JTKM and associate editor of AMSES in Diamond Open Access and Gold Open Access models. We took an interview with Anna Pandolfi, editor-in-chief of Mécanique from Springer, and with Samuel Forest, editor-in-chief of Conférence du Mécanique, Diamond Open Access, and associate editor of JMPS Hybrid 1 from Elsevier. All these interviews were shared on the same YouTube channel or will be shared very soon. And I'm very grateful to David, Alexander, Anna and Samuel for their time. So I leave you listen some short parts of this interview, and for the full versions you can look on the channel.
So the Compte Rendu Mécanique is a very special journal. It has a strong historical background coming from the beginning of 19th century by Arago. So this is very important to support this historical aspect, and the Compte Rendu exists for many disciplines, physics, chemistry and mechanics, and you can find the list also in paleontology. There are many of them. So the topics, disciplines are very important. This is in contrast to proceeding of Royal Society, for instance, where everything is mixed. So this is a result of history. And Compte Rendu Mécanique is very special. Mécanique is a lively science today with many theoretical aspects and engineering application. And the Compte Rendu are very special because the scope is very broad. I must say that we are interested in papers where you have some theoretical background and you have some numerical and modeling aspects and also experimental results. So it means that in the broad scope of mechanics we have limited to modeling oriented and simulation oriented papers, but we like also very important experiments that we should share with the community.
What makes a good paper is so it's a very tough question.
In terms of dissemination and impact.
So in terms of dissemination, some years ago, I mean at the beginning of my career, I was always thinking that even if you don't publish in a very well-known journal, if you went to conferences, presented your work, if your work was good, it will be known. Nowadays, there are so many journals, so many conferences that this is no longer really true. You really have to work very hard to get your work known. I think it depends on the generations. I think for the younger generations, social media, having a feed on some of the social medias is very important for the journals to disseminate their papers, and even authors on their own should disseminate as much as they can on social media. I think that's one of the main avenue for information nowadays. I think going to conferences is still extremely important to present your work and bring people to know of your work and then read your papers. Without that, it's much harder. Now the issue is that there are so many conferences that you will never be able to talk to everybody in your community, but that's probably another issue. So
okay, So a good review, I think the review is the most important step during the submission, revision, and publishing of a paper. The most important aspects for me are the response of the reviewers. So, of course, is important also the first decision made by the editor-in-chief that excludes the very bad contribution. But then, if the contribution is really a novelty, only the expert can decide. So the function of the reviewer is really to compare the contribution with what is actually in the literature and to decide if it is really new, if it's well expressed, well presented, because also a very bad editorial presentation makes the paper difficult to evaluate, to be evaluated. Okay, so the review has this very important function to verify that there is a new content, verify that the presentation is able to transmit the information that is in the paper, and also to avoid, these very unethical things that are the self-citation and all these things that are very bad for the reputation of the journal and are very bad for every single paper.
First of all, I think it's always important but that applies to many parts of our system, but to not complain about the state of a system, but to actually contribute and also change how the game is played. So, and I think we're all very well aware that the publication system has certain problems, and that I think both of those journals that were just mentioned, they have a different approach, but both of those journals have some ideas of maybe giving a new touch and a new alternative to the publication system, and to not just continue as usual. And that's the main motivation behind that. So to really contribute to those changes in how we publish and how we manage the publication system.
I think open science for me, it's the perfect example of a bad good idea. I think I think we live in a crazy system where we as scientists do everything. We find the money to do the science, we do the science, we write the paper, we evaluate the paper, we do everything, and then there are publishing companies that make money out of it. And so open science started as a very good idea. The fact that everybody should have access to the papers was, I think, very important. The issue with me is that some of the publishing companies have used that to make even more money than they made before. And that makes absolutely no sense for me. I don't mind paying to be published so that the paper will be accessible to everybody. I think that's a good idea, but it should be a fair price. And setting the price of a paper like modern art, the more expensive, the better the journal. Makes zero sense for me. So there should really be non-profit companies that should take care of scientific publication. Unfortunately, I mean, there are some companies, some non-profit that already do it. The issue is that the reputation of a journal takes years to build. So when you start from scratch a new journal, before it gets its reputation, it's gonna take 5 to 10 years at the very, very minimum. And so I think I hope that more and more fair journal will be created. But I also know that, and this is especially important for students who need to build their CVs, and there are some journals of reference, and these, because they dominate the market, they can put any price on their papers, and that's unfortunate. So I'm really hoping that there are new journals that will be created.
And to finish, I have a few take-home messages. First one, open access has different phases. The first phase that you might know, it's gold open access, which is led by publishers, which implies article processing charge or APC and has a very high predatory danger. The second phase is green open access. It's a partial solution for the problem of paywalls, so we can share our preprints and postprints which would otherwise remain beyond the paywall. And the diamond open access, for me, it's the ultimate and fairer open access, which is often community-led, and it's a free solution which removes all the paywalls, not only in front of the readers, but also in front of the authors, and it's more egalitarian. The second take-home message is that the race for H-index optimization is very harmful for science. It increases fraud, and also it increases the overburden of the entire community in terms of increasing number of reviews. But fortunately, institutions advocate for a ban on publication-based metrics, H-indexes and impact factors in research assessment. And it's a very good point. So I invite you to take a look at DORA and CORA. Next take-home message is that scientists are strongly convinced that we should align with the commitments of CORA and DORA for the good of science. And the last point, that scientists could support better community-led initiatives in scientific publishing. It would be also for the good of science. And now I'd like to cite you the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by United Nations 1948, that everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. Good principles for diamond open access, for open science, and so on. On the publisher side, they like better the second point number 2. Everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific, literary, or artistic production of which he/she is the author. However, the author here on the publisher side is quite often forgotten. To conclude, I would like to share with you some readings, and the first one is about lessons learned, a post by Professor John Dolbo about his experience as editor-in-chief for Financial in analysis and design. The second one, it's the scientist publication dilemma. It's about analogy between a classical prisoner's dilemma from the game theory and the current situation in scientific publications. I also invite you to take a look on 18 Principles of San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, which is available in 30 languages. It's very short, but very instructive reading. And I invite you to take a look on 10 commitments of the Coalition for Advancing Research Assessment, CORA. And the last reading, Meditations on Moloch. It's a great essay by Scott Alexander about societal systems that can produce collectively harmful outcomes, and I think the current publication practices are of this sort. Thank you very much for your attention, and goodbye.